A pack of dogs on a walk refused to stop barking at a parked car, and their walker suddenly heard a strange sound coming from within. She immediately called the cops, and when they checked the vehicle, they had no choice but to break in. Nicky was sweating. It was one of the warmest days of the year. Personally, she would have loved to stay in her air-conditioned apartment instead of taking this long walk under the scorching sun. But as a dog walker, she didn't have that option. However, she had moved her walks earlier in the day because she was worried about the dog's health. Many of her dogs had long hair, and they couldn't walk in extreme heat. Before walking out of the tree-covered park, she gave all of them water. They would be in the sun until they reached their apartments, so they needed to be hydrated. But all the dogs were antsy, couldn't stand still. They wanted to get out of the park. The dog pack was pulling at her lead, and for the first time ever, she was worried that they would pull her in the opposite direction of her house. Their leads were all wrapped around her waist so that they couldn't get loose, but she wasn't a large woman, and they could take off with her if they wanted to. Nicky thought that they probably just wanted to get home because they were drained from the walk. But that was not their plan. The dogs rushed up to one parked car and started sniffing and barking at it. Nicky tried to pull the dogs away from the car. She knew that no owner would be happy to see a woman and 5 dogs around their vehicle, but the pack resisted, and one of the dogs even picked up its paw and started scratching at the car. Nicky was horrified. She needed to get them away from the vehicle, and now, but it didn't matter how much she pulled and tugged, they would not budge. To make matters worse, they were in the direct blistering sun, and she was already drenched in sweat. It couldn't be good for the fluffy dogs to be in this heat. They could get sunstroke and overheat. The dogs needed to get some shade. She decided that there was only one way to get all their attention at once. She showed them the snack pouch on her side, and suddenly they were very interested in their walker. They sat in front of her, finally calm and silent, and suddenly her blood ran cold. The dogs had been making so much noise that she hadn't been able to hear anything but them. But now she could hear what the dogs were moaning about. There was something inside the car. She couldn't figure out what it was, but soft moans came from inside. She had to do something. But first, she needed to sort the dogs out. She took them just a short distance away and tied them up under the trees. She also gave them water and the promised snacks, and then she went back to the car. The dogs were close enough so she could keep an eye on them. But now she wanted to figure out what they had been telling her. The sound was very faint, but it was for sure not just the car making strange noises. She tried checking inside the car, but the windows were tinted and she couldn't see the floor of the vehicle. For seconds, she considered taking a rock and smashing a window. In most places, if you can take a screenshot of the weather service showing extreme heat and take a picture of a car with closed windows and doors, then you won't be charged for damage if you break it to save something or someone. Nicky was looking around for a rock that would work when she saw a police vehicle coming down the road. Just acting without truly thinking it through, she jumped out onto the road and waved her arms, getting the police officer's attention. The car screeched to a halt, and they screamed at her for being so reckless. What if they injured her? They yelled, but she quickly explained that she needed their help. The cops got out and walked to the car with her. She explained that her pack of dogs refused to stop barking at the parked car, and she was hearing strange sounds coming from within. The cops checked out the vehicle. They too heard the noise and looked at her with worry in their eyes. There was for sure something inside the car that was alive. But in the boiling vehicle, there was no saying how long they would stay that way. The cops called the fire department, but there was no sign of them yet. 10 minutes passed, and they didn't know how much time they had left. First, they considered just breaking a window and opening the door, but they couldn't see inside the vehicle. They had no idea where the creature they wanted to save was. If they broke the wrong window, the glass could cause injury to the occupant. They would have to break the door open. The easiest and safest spot was in the trunk, so they grabbed a crowbar and approached the car. Nicky went to the dogs and checked on them, but she couldn't leave yet. She had to see how everything played out. The cops pushed the crowbar in the trunk. They physically broke it open, and the steel bent. There was a lot of damage on the vehicle, but they had ample cause to break it, and they knew they wouldn't be charged for it. The car alarm was now going off, but they knew they had done the right thing. The back seat was down, and an animal crate was sitting on it. They got it out and saw that there were two tiny cats huddled in the back. The kittens looked weak and were barely lifting their heads. Nicky came over with the bottle of water she carried for the dogs and gave it to the kittens. The cops also rubbed them down with some of the water. The kittens drank deeply, but they still seemed to sway. It was easy to see they were very sick. The cops were busy figuring out what to do with the kittens when a guy came out of a nearby office building and started screaming at Nicky. He was furious because of what she had done to his car. The cops were now crouched down on the pavement trying to revive the cats, and all he could see was the young woman standing next to his broken trunk. The dog pack started to growl as he walked up to her, but the car alarm drowned their barks. The dogs didn't like the man's energy. He didn't seem out of control, but this was a guy that left kittens in his car in the boiling heat, so they couldn't know what he was capable of. He came up to her, still screaming, but suddenly halted when the two cops came out from behind the vehicle. Then the man directed his anger towards them. He demanded to know what right they had to damage his vehicle or to break in. The cops didn't answer. One of them just held up one of the kittens in the air, showing the man the exact reason why his car had been broken into. The man went white. As soon as he saw the cats, he was in shock and almost fainted. He sat down on the pavement and with a shaking voice asked if the kittens were okay. The man in front of them was not the angry guy that he had been seconds before. He was shattered. He had truly thought they had destroyed his vehicle for no reason, but now he could only be grateful that they had stepped in. Ed had made the biggest mistake of his life that morning. His cat had become a mom several weeks earlier, and the kittens were almost old enough to go to their forever homes. He wanted to take the smallest of them to the vet to get another checkup, and that's why he had loaded them into his car that morning. He was on his way to the vet's office when he got a call from work. An important client had an issue, and his boss wanted to know if Ed could go to see them right away. Of course, he said that he would go right away. His mind was busy with solutions to the problem, and he didn't think of the passengers at the back. The kittens weren't making any noise, as they must have fallen asleep on the drive. He reached his office, locked the car, and ran off to sort out the crisis, completely forgetting that he had the kittens in the car. He heard his car alarm when he was on his way out and thought that someone was messing with his vehicle, until he saw the cats. He was sick to his stomach thinking of the pain the kittens had already gone through and how badly this situation could have turned out. He kept thanking Nicky and the officers for stepping in, but it might already be too late to fix his mistake. For all they knew, this could be his way of getting rid of unwanted kittens. He told them where his vet was, and the cops said that they would take the kittens there. Nicky offered to follow them, but first she had to get the pack of hero dogs to their respective homes. They had been gone a lot longer than a walk normally took, but if the dogs didn't alert them to the kittens, then things would have turned out completely differently. Nicky took the dogs home, and then she phoned the vet to check on the cats. The kittens were dehydrated and had heat stroke, but with some IV fluids, they would be back to normal in no time. She breathed a sigh of relief. She couldn't stop thinking of those tiny bodies lying limp in their crate, but she was glad they would be okay. The next day, Nicky was walking the pack in the same park again when she got a massive shock. Ed was waiting for her on a bench and immediately shot to his feet when he saw her. She still didn't trust him completely, but strangely enough, this time the dogs didn't get irritated with him. She trusted her dog's instincts, and their calm body language made her relax slightly too. The dogs were right. Ed simply wanted to thank them for all they did. He gave each of the dogs a large snack and bought Nicky some iced tea. When she asked if he wasn't angry about his car anymore, he just replied that life is more important than any inanimate object. After scratching all the dogs, Ed thanked her one more time and then walked away. That day, Nicky went to check on the kittens in person. She was delighted and surprised by what she saw. Both of them were up and playing. They were a world away from the condition that she had last seen them. Her name was on the information too, and the vet was happy to share what they had learned. She knew Ed because he often brought in his cat for checkups. Animal control had gone out and checked his cat's condition and had reported that she was living an awesome life. She had climbing spots and all sorts of toys and was also very healthy and well looked after. That discovery, combined with the fact that Ed did have an appointment for the kittens at the vet that morning, told them the whole story. He was indeed scheduled to take them to the vet, just like he had said. He had made a horrible but honest mistake. He paid the medical bills for the kittens and his car repairs. Animal control cleared him, and he wouldn't be charged with deliberately hurting the kittens. It wasn't long before the kittens were ready to go back to their mom and siblings, and then meet their forever families. Ed made absolutely sure that they would have a good life. It was the least he could do after putting them in so much danger. And surprisingly enough, Nicky was one of those forever families. She adopted the 2 kittens her pack of dogs had saved and made sure they would never be that scared ever again in their lives. The kittens loved dogs and sometimes even went on walks with the dog pack. Some people found it an odd sight, but Nicky thought it made sense that they loved them. They did owe these dogs their lives, after all. What a great ending! Have you ever forgotten something important in your car? Would you have been suspicious of Ed as well? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Join us again for even more incredible stories.